Right now on Denver 7, a packed day at the state capitol as lawmakers race to pass last-minute legislation. We're taking a look at what they hope to accomplish before the session ends.
All of us want to know if inflation is nearing its peak. What economists are watching that could give us that answer and some relief from those high prices. Plus, restaurants need more chefs right now, but the cost of culinary school can put that career out of reach for so many people. We'll take a look at the different type of program that is growing nationwide, making this education more affordable.
Plus, a local elected official now choosing to wear a bulletproof vest to work, why he says threats are forcing him to step up security. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Grenauer. There's only one day left in the Colorado legislative session, and state lawmakers are scrambling to work on as many bills as they can. So here's a look at some of the more noteworthy bills that they got through today. The House passed a major election security bill. It requires all counties to have constant surveillance and key card access to any room storing election equipment. The bill heads back to the Senate for a final review before going to the governor's desk. Lawmakers also passed a bipartisan bill that provides $30 million to police departments across the state. The money will fund crisis prevention training programs and help departments recruit and retain new officers. State lawmakers killed a controversial flavored tobacco ban bill. The bill received heavy criticism over its effectiveness and whether it would actually lower youth tobacco use. One bill that lawmakers passed last night aims to hold towing companies accountable. Contact Denver 7 has reported extensively on what many call predatory towing practices. This bill cracks down on non-consensual towing and bans towing for things like expired license plates. We asked the governor's office if he plans on signing it. They said he will review the bill once it gets to his desk. Contact Denver 7 frequently hears complaints about people all over the Denver metro getting parking tickets despite paying for parking. Now the city of Denver is stepping in to help.
People will pay it because they just don't want the hassle, and so that company makes money, kind of illegally.
Jeff Gonzalez paid to park downtown in February for his daughter's cheer competition. He later received an $80 parking notice for an expired ticket. After Jeff complained to the city, investigators found the lot owner's business license had expired 2 years ago in 2020. So the city had the ticket revoked and tells our consumer investigator Jacqueline Allen everyone who got tickets should get a refund.
Should they get their money back?
They absolutely should get their money back because that parking garage or lot was not operating legally and they don't have the right to issue a ticket.
Contact Denver 7 spoke with the head of Parking Revenue Recovery Services. He says they've added dozens of cameras downtown to increase parking compliance, so more people will likely be getting tickets. He blames COVID for the expired business licenses, but would not comment to refunding tickets issued while they were expired. Now, if you got a ticket that you suspect isn't following the rules, city leaders encourage you to call 311 so they can investigate. The Adams County clerk and recorder says he's had to improve security at his office in Brighton because of threats he's received following the 2020 presidential election. We met with Josh Ziegelbaum today, who now says he wears a bulletproof vest at work. He says election deniers have made direct and indirect threats against him and his staff. As part of security improvements, his office is being remodeled to better protect his employees. They're even adding film to the windows to make them shatterproof.
I never thought that it would escalate to this level. I think January 6th was a good reminder that it can very easily go beyond just words.
Now, Ziegelbaum is up for re-election this November, and despite the conspiracy theories and threats, he says he's not backing down.
Well, we're all feeling the impact of inflation, and tomorrow we'll get a new snapshot of the current numbers from the federal government. It's a report that comes out each month, but Dan Grossman explains why this month's report is so crucial.
Maybe like you, I did some driving this past weekend, and the prices that I saw at the pump took my breath away. $60 to $70 to fill up my 13-gallon tank. On Wednesday, the feds are going to release April's inflation numbers called the Consumer Price Index, and the information we find in that report can give us an indicator on whether or not these numbers and others are going to continue to rise.
I think what good news would be from this report would be to see that the rate of increases has slowed down.
Christina Huber is a professor of economics and says Wednesday's Consumer Price Index report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics could give us an idea of whether inflation is nearing its peak. Since August, inflation numbers have risen steadily. It started out slow. Prices were around 0.3% higher from the month before, according to the Fed, but it has accelerated quickly in recent months. From February to March, prices increased by 1.2%. It's why last week, the Federal Reserve implemented its most extreme interest rate hike in more than 20 years.
I think this month's inflation report is key to look at to see is that working? Has that drastic interest rate hike worked, or do we need to continue to do this? And the Federal Reserve fully expects to increase several more times in the coming years.
On May 4th, the Feds upped interest rates by 0.5 percentage point. Let's say you just bought a $30,000 car with a 5-year loan you got at 3% interest. That extra 0.5 percentage point would mean you're paying about an extra $400 over the course of that 5 years. The thing is, Wednesday's report will determine if the Feds raise that interest rate more and by how much, determining how much more you're paying for these big purchases over time.
So expenditures that require a loan, whether it be a mortgage or a car loan, that's where we're starting to see the slowdown. But that's not what makes up most of the consumer price index.
Matt Klaus is a professor of finance and says even though the Federal Reserve is working to slow down high prices in equity investments, it's separate from other things like the prices of gas and food, which depend on other factors. And that's the thing about the Consumer Price Index. It gives us a snapshot of inflation as a whole. So even if this month's prices haven't risen as much as others, we might still see those higher prices in the stores.
For people to think that the Fed doing things is going to impact the supply side, where we've got much of our inflation coming from, just isn't going to happen. It's taking a bigger bite out of especially when you go to the gas pump and when you go to the grocery store. And those are the things that impact consumers the most.
I'm Dan Grossman.
Good insight there, Dan. Thank you. Now, the federal government is ramping up its efforts to educate people about the dangers of fentanyl. We'll talk about where this deadly drug is now showing up and the expanding methods to try and reduce overdoses.
Plus, swings and slides are great for a kid's playset, but a Brighton man built something even better. See why his backyard is looking a bit like Elitch Gardens next.